Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Dear Ms. T with Terry Ruel. It's so good to have everyone with us. The chat room is open, everybody, and I'd like to welcome Terry Ruel. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, everyone on planet Earth. I think we're still on this planet, even though some days it might not feel that way. We are living in very first time times, first time for all of us to have to face the challenges of a pandemic. So it can feel very surreal some days.
Most definitely. I love the subject matter that you chose for today, Terry.
Well, I thought we could talk a little bit about, we're all in a different place right now. Some people are feeling like they're, moving forward and creating a new normal and have kind of got a handle on things and are really discovering and some wonderful things that they're more creative about than they might have thought they could be with cooking or teaching or other things. And then other people are feeling this week or last week like they hit their wall and they just felt exhausted. And then some people are feeling like, that they need to have something happen. They need to get out. They need things to go back to normal. And, all of those things are normal things to go through. It's kind of like when we talk about the grieving process, how we go back and forth through the stages and we think we're through them all and we're at acceptance and we're creating a new normal. And then all of a sudden we're back in anger or bargaining or depression, sadness. So I think the, first thing, of course, is to always try to remember that this is first time we've ever been through anything like this, and we're going to probably go back and forth depending on our own personal circumstances and what's happening in our lives. And I was thinking about, a lot of you probably know I've worked with substance abuse for years too, and I love the 12 steps. And Breathing Underwater, Richard Rohr's book, is one of my favorites. And, he says in there, we're all addicted to something. And one of the biggest things we're all addicted to is our way of thinking.
Oh,
So it really challenges us when we face something for the first time, because not only does it trigger all our vulnerabilities, it's very uncomfortable. And we start feeling like, we have to challenge our way of thinking. And we don't like to do that. Mm-hmm. We like to stay in feeling that illusion of control that, if I think this way and I believe this way, then everything's going to be okay. And so, we're all being challenged to release things and let go and try to go with the flow of this, and at the same time make good choices. Mm-hmm. So this, and right now too, we're a lot of us are feeling like we're kind of in the in-between place where, okay, we've kind of accepted that it's not back where it used to be. This is a new world, but we haven't quite, felt grounded yet, or we don't really know what the new normal is going to be yet. So that in-between place can also be pretty uncomfortable unless we can let go and surrender to it. Because if we can surrender to that, it can be where there's room for the new to come in. And for those of you who have started to experience, I'm getting really creative about my cooking, or I'm starting to get really creative with this teaching, or finding new ways to communicate with my family and building bridges that I didn't know, needed mending, or that I wanted in my life, or letting go of ones. All of those come in more when we're in the in-between place, because that's where there's room for the new to come in. So if you look at that coming in, you can see you've kind of surrendered then to the now, to what is, even though, like say, there's a lot of uncertainty around it because, we don't know what our new patterns are going to look like. That surrender is what has allowed the new to come in and you to become co-creating with the higher power, the higher powers, or your higher power. So it's really a very blessed time. And that's one of the things I've learned with 12 steps, is that that's what surrender can be such a beautiful thing. It's not about not owning your power, but it's about being able to accept what is right now, and that maybe I'm going to be uncomfortable, but if I can sit with this, there's stuff is going to come in that's going to be really good for me. And some people call it like a release of grace, that grace is always there, but when we're in a surrendered place, it's like we either experience it more because we've gotten out of our own way, or it just makes room, it opens up space for that grace to just blow in really big,
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I felt like I've been kind of in the in-between place. And it's not easy to surrender to that every day, We, we really want to not feel that discomfort, so some days it's hard to, kind of force ourselves to do the spiritual work or the letting go work or the just relaxing into it, not, like I say, getting in our own way by just trying to get busy or do whatever our other compulsive behaviors are that, are easy to do, or self-medicate too much, or, I mean, I imagine everybody's, maybe not everybody, but, people joke about having to have maybe another glass of wine than they might usually have and that kind of thing. And there's nothing wrong with, doing those kind of self-care things as long as they're in balance, So we want to take care of ourselves and not over, have our expectations be that we have to do this perfectly. But, at the same time, checking ourselves to see, okay, am I, trying to control too much? They have a saying in 12 steps: you name it, claim it, and tame it. And I've always loved that, because if you can't name something, it's much harder to own it and then try to figure out what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to laugh because I love Brene Brown. I try to catch her podcast too, and she was actually on Jimmy Fallon. I don't know if anybody saw it, but she was talking about, she calls them the FFTs, the freaking first times.
I like that.
Well, you can use another word, but, on TV, she said she had to use the freaking first times. And, of course, that's what we're all experiencing right now. And so I love that. And she also says, you got to name it because it's, that's what we have to do. We've got to name what's happening so that we can start to figure out how to take care of ourselves with it. Mm-hmm. And her way of talking about claiming it was, to see what our perspective is. How am I looking at this? And as my perspective, do I understand that I'm going to feel very vulnerable and that it's okay to feel vulnerable because this is a freaking first time. Mm-hmm. And is my perspective in balance? Do I know that we will get through this and we will get on the other side of it? And it might take a lot of endurance and time, and there may be some suffering in it. But what are my expectations? And that's kind of the taming of it. If I expect that this is going to be over without any difficulty, then maybe my expectations aren't very realistic. And, so that's kind of the taming it, is looking at what are my expectations here. Mm-hmm. And if I'm addicted to my way of thinking, that, everything has to be a certain way, and that it's black and white, I'm going to suffer a lot more, because my expectations are going to be based on a unrealistic, or what in therapy we would call distorted thought patterns. And that's where you see people really struggle and suffer more, because they think it should be one way or another, black and white. And if it's not that, then there's a lot of, difficulty for them. And we're all learning as we go a lot of this. And so, things aren't black and white, even especially in the beginning, things were changing all the time. So we had new information coming in every day, and now they're trying to talk about how can we open up and do it safely, and, wearing masks and keeping the social distancing. And so, if we can keep an open mind about this and know that this is a learning curve and a growth process, and that the more we go with this and try to learn, the less we're going to suffer, then we're going to tame our own unrealistic expectations, I guess we could say.
Right. I was reading an article this morning, Terry, about divorce attorneys right now are having a heyday. I mean, their phones are ringing off the hook.
Oh boy, I believe it.
Mm-hmm. And so, part of the reality of being in lockdown, or, being confined to a space with our children, our family members, our significant others, is that, we're also having to face, not only maybe who these people are and who they are under crisis, with the crisis, but how we react to all of that, which I think is what you're talking about so beautifully. So the person that is at home with others who are having their FFT with this pandemic, how do we come to a place where we can maybe be patient and realize that everybody's going through an FFT right now, and, sorting through, just sorting through all of that. It's a lot.
Yes. Well, one of the things that came back to me, and tell me if I talked about this before, but I was asked to do a talk once at the church I attended, and what I talked about was the 3 little C's that block us from the big C. And that was seeing the Christ in ourselves and seeing the Christ in others. Did I talk about this before?
No.
Okay. And I thought it might be helpful during this time with families too, and relatives and friends, for all of us, because we always want to remember that the Christ light, if we want to call it that, or however you call it that, the big C, is in us and is in everyone, no matter what. Even when we're in our dark night of the soul, or we're acting out in our worst, not our best angels, right? Mm-hmm. And usually the 3 little C's that get us in the way of seeing the Christ in ourselves as well as other people is comparing, control, and criticism. And I just found this easy to remember when it came through me. So I hope it might be helpful for everyone, because one of the little C's, that's when we start getting in trouble with ourselves, as well as dampening the Christ light in ourselves or others. When we start comparing someone's behavior or our behavior or what someone's saying in our mind to what it should be. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody else wouldn't do this, but it can be even, well, they shouldn't feel that way, or they shouldn't be, and people are going to need, when they're going through FFTs, freaking first times, you need a day to freak out. You need time to just to let it out. So it's much more helpful than if we can see, oh, they're really having a bad day, and say to them, if you need to freak out and go out in the backyard and yell for a while or throw some balls or something, that's okay. I feel for you. I've had those days too. Like giving each other permission to not have, what we would think are appropriate feelings, or, and being able to name it, like, I see you suffering. I see you having a really hard time. What can I do to help? Or do you need to go, freak out in the basement for a while? And of course, that doesn't mean, we ever allow any kind of violence or abuse. That we have to set a boundary for. And if somebody's really freaking out, you might have to be the one to leave and go for a walk with the kids or something, and say, we're going to go for a walk because you need to get yourself in a better place. If it's safe to say that. If it's not, then you just go for a walk. But a lot of times, out of comparing or getting it in our head that it should be a certain way, we try to do the other C, the control, or we start to do the other C, criticize. And like I say, we do this to ourselves too. And controlling, you can't control another person, period. We know that, right? The only person we can control is ourselves. But that doesn't mean that we control our feelings by trying to suppress them. It means that we make a choice on what behavior we're going to do that's going to best help us process this feeling and release it. And it could be journaling, or it could be, like, say, going for a walk, or it could be asking someone to talk to us with us about it, but not trying to control the way we feel, not trying to control what is, because that's just going to make us more frustrated. We see that in turning into rage, even in anger, when people are trying to control what is right now, to the point where it's just not part of the solution anymore. It's just creating more problems. And of course, the criticism, the other C, is, finding looking for the things that we think are wrong, instead of trying to look at solutions, for ourselves as well. Like asking ourselves, what do I need right now to take care of myself? Or what does this person need right now? If I can see their Christ light in them trying to shine through and shaking with all this, whether it's fear or just wherever they go to when they're stressed, then I'm not going to go to criticism. I'm going to look for compassion. And what can I do? And same with ourselves. We have to be compassionate with ourselves first, or it's going to be hard to be compassionate with other people. And so that's kind of often the solution is the other big C, which is compassion. And starting with ourselves, ask yourself first, how am I feeling right now while this other person is freaking out?
Right.
Do I want to freak out right now too because they're freaking out? Well, yeah, that's, part of the first reaction is because that energy is there, and that's the other thing that kept coming to me this week too, is recognizing this is so big what we're in, because this is a collective transformation or evolutionary process, as well as a individual process, as well as a family process. There's a lot of processes going on here, and this evolutionary or transformation is physical, it's energetic, it's emotional, it's thoughts, it's mind, and it's spiritual. So we have changes and transformation going on physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, societally, and planetary. I don't think it gets much bigger than that.
Well, it really doesn't.
I don't think, yeah. And this is just on our planet. We don't even know how, maybe this is, there's probably a whole bunch of planetary stuff going on too at the same time, right?
Exactly. So Terry, when I'm listening to you, and thank you for everything that you're offering. It's so helpful. For you, I mean, you are an elder, right? And you are a psychotherapist. You're a very spiritual woman, a very compassionate woman. What do you do for you every day while this is going on?
Well, the biggest thing I'm trying to stay disciplined with, which I have my days too, where it's really hard to push myself to do it. Even though I know it's what works and it's what's going to make me feel better and do better, it's still hard at times. And that for me is my spiritual practices, because they're also physical for me. I do walking meditation as well as sitting meditation. And that helps my body, my back especially. And I process probably more right now with God, and with like I try to listen to podcasts or books and then write about it. And what else am I doing? That's probably the main stuff. For me, it's kind of checking into with myself every hour, where I'll either say a little prayer or just, it's kind of like I try to stay in that place where I'm, how does that verse go? In this world, but not of this world.
Uh-huh.
Where I try to keep myself in the flow with spirit, to where I can keep kind of resetting.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I do that, like when I watch my grandson, and he's a great help. He's 2, and so we go outside a lot, and he really keeps me connected to nature. And I'm work on being very aware of always stopping, to smell the flowers no matter what he wants to do, and stay very present. And so we can just really connect with nature every day. And that helps me tremendously. I think I posted something like the last couple of weeks, he's just been fascinated with dandelions fuzzies, he just discovered those. So every day we have this whole ritual now that he's kind of developed, as we try different things, and we go get the fuzzies, and I have to tickle his nose with them, and then he blows on them, and it's just this really fun thing, and it keeps me grounded with him in the now and nature, and what really matters in a way, mostly because all we can do is the now. Even though in the back of my mind I'm still watching him, that he doesn't get too close to any other kids or doesn't pick up anything. If he does, it's like, they have to wash their hands if they touch anything that's not nature. So that stress is always there for us. But if we have an awareness about it, and we know, okay, I know what I have to do. I know what I have to pay attention to, so I can kind of just put it in the background and enjoy this moment with him. And that just really kind of helps me. I mean, kids are the best teachers, and they're such great gurus because they live totally in the moment. So they make you stay in the moment,
So, Terry, I'm sitting here with Easton on my lap.
Oh.
Speaking of grandsons. And so from your perspective and from your life perspective, when we come through when we come through this, what sort of world do you see us leaving our children and our grandchildren? What are the gifts that you believe are coming about?
Well, I guess I'm still in the in-between place where I get a little scared that it could go either way. But I'm an optimist, so, my perspective is usually towards that. I do think, because I've worked enough with probably chemical dependency and other stuff, I know that people have to get in a lot of pain usually before they change. So my prayer is often that there be the least amount of suffering before there's enough awakening that we can make the changes that we need to make so that there is no more suffering. Because I totally know that that's possible. And I do totally believe and know that love is the most powerful energy in the universe. And so it will always win out. It's just, like I say, my prayer is more towards that there be the least amount of suffering before that we learn what we need to learn. And I do believe that they are going to, my grandkids and my great grandchild I have now too, they just, they're so full of light that I do believe the world is going to evolve to where there won't be suffering anymore. And love will conquer all, kind of thing. And I think it's going to come about both from necessity as well as awakening. So does that answer your question?
I think that's beautiful. And in listening to you describe your time with your grandson, I think one of the things perhaps we have an opportunity to leave our children with and our grandchildren with are beautiful memories right now.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Anything we're doing right now too is what's going to help them to, become the light bearers that are their energy is so full of love. I just feel like, that anything we do to add that or complement that or help them, bring that forward is just all going to help everybody.
And I think that, having taken classes with you regarding inner child work, I think that it's also an opportunity for us to allow our inner child some experiences along with this.
Oh, so much. I mean, it's such a gift of our own healing because my child gets to come out and play with, all the stuff that I may have missed out on or didn't get enough of, I get to have it now.
Exactly.
And that brings great joy and love into the world too.
Yeah.
So,
my whole office right now is filled with love because not only is Easton here, but so is Chester.
Oh, wonderful. That's so wonderful.
It's the play zone in here at this current moment. And
they keep us very grounded too.
Well, and I think, part of what's going on in all of this, finding the beauty, is we're having to help one another, whether it's helping a friend or in this case, helping Elise and Matt. And some of it's very impromptu. We're having to learn to go with the flow.
Yes.
Because of the extraordinary circumstance. And so, going with the flow, even for those listening to your show right now, with the fact that through this, we're all having to help out in ways.
Yes, and we're all letting go, like you say, more and more of trying to control, and we'll let go of our comparing and our criticizing, and Christ just shines through.
That's right.
Well, that's wonderful. I wish I could be there in person. So I hope it won't be too long before I get to meet Easton in person.
Yeah, you definitely are invested in him, and he has a lot of good, what do I want to say? He owes you a lot for having such a good mama.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. She is a precious soul.
She is. And you, over the years, have helped her tremendously. Well, all of us. In so many ways. And so we're so grateful that you have taken your life experiences and your precious time to be with us once a month, Terry.
Oh, thank you. It's my privilege, truly, and I get as much from it as you might think I give. So thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, we are at the bottom of your hour. What's the final message for all your listeners, Terry?
Well, I guess wherever you are, if you're in the in-between place or need to rest or you're very creative, know that it's all okay and we're getting through this together.
I love that. With that, everybody, get out there and shine your light. And Terry, thank you for doing all that you do for so many of us.
Oh, thank you. I love you. Love you all.
Blessings be everyone. Have a beautiful day, Terry.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.